So here I am with the singularly most amazing Monaghan entrepreneur, Fred Duffy, who has more than a story to tell. Hello, Fred. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about your life and times?
Well, it depends how many hours going to give me because it would take quite a long time. But let's say probably realized when I was quite mature that I am actually an entrepreneur. I didn't know that when I was growing up. To me, I was a cheeky young fella trying things, but it's clear to me now at my age the entrepreneurial mind will not go to sleep. It is still coming out with ideas, and it really is down to my roots, which I think probably come from my mother in Scottstown, County Monaghan. Uh, she was a Caulfield, and she had ambitions above her station insofar as she married a plasterer, a builder, and persuaded him to start his little shop in Monaghan, and then persuaded Lord Rossmore to let us into the diamond on a lease that was quite wonderful, give us an opportunity, give them an opportunity to build up a fine business. So I was born there, and I think I have my mother's gene because I have never, have always been adventurous, always looking for things to do and to improve. And I really never knew that until I matured.
Can you tell us, please, when you left Monaghan first, what was your first career?
My first career after school, I went to university for a little while. Didn't suit me. I am not an academic. I cannot study. I fall asleep. But I am an active person, action. And I was wonderful, happy to get a job in the Merchant Navy as a radio officer. It was perfect for me because it was a finishing school. It knocked off the edges and made me ready for the big time, as it were, because my next job after that was getting into the Shell Corporation, the Shell Company, which was rather special because in those days you had to have degrees or be captains or colonels from the army, and to fit into that social mode, I couldn't have done it without the Merchant Navy, the experience.
Okay, so how many years altogether were you at the Merchant Navy?
I had 2 years of the fabulous fun. I remember I was 18 and a half in gorgeous ships going to the nicest parts of the world, the West Indies, South America, Brazil, Argentina. It was a fabulous 2 years.
And thereafter, where was your next move?
My next move after the shipping
Mm.
was Shell, and Shell was a wonderful job.
How did you go from, how did they transfer over? What exactly was your role with Shell?
I think a bit of neck. The actual specification was you had to be 14, but I was only, pardon me, let me rephrase that. I had to be 24, but I was only 23. But I put down honestly my date of birth and left it to them to check on my age, which I knew they wouldn't. So I got in at the age of 23. I was an officer and a gentleman in a very prestigious company. I was introduced to the marvelous new concept of oil-fired central heating to bring warm homes to the people in the Houses of England, and by my request, then I got transferred to Ireland, which was a wonderful experience.
And of course, we would take all of that for granted, the central heating and modern technology and whatever. But when you were doing what you were doing with Shell, this was all innovative technology at the time, I guess.
It was so innovative that our iconic model, June Mansfield, was we called her Mrs. 1970 because it was 10 years ahead of our time. It was only in the 60s. And we set up a program in the fashion house in Grafton Street. There is a story there. They made life-size pictures of me, full life-size, and stood me along with two other salespeople in a showroom in Grafton Street. It was called the Grafton Arcade, I think it was called.
Okay.
And was a young lady I was chasing at that time who hadn't got much time for me, but she was kind of curious. And one night in Dublin, she was with her friends and said, talking about this fellow I've just met, come down to Crofton Street, I can show you what he looks like. And there I was standing smiling for everyone to see it.
She must have been impressed.
So
Yeah.
that maybe helped me on my way.
And how many years altogether were you with Shell?
I was with Shell probably, and from memory now, you want to read my book, you find it all there, but I think approximately 10 years. And I got an idea that intrigued me, that at that time, everyone's car, they had the oil changed regularly, and the lubricating oil from the engine was dumped into the sewer. And I thought, that's oil, it's combustible, it's got a little bit of dirt in it, a little bit of water in it, but surely with a bit of TLC, we can turn that into a fuel oil. So let's do it. And that gave me the idea of starting a recycling company.
And that recycling company was known as?
Atlas Oil.
Atlas Oil. And I think most people, when I started reading your book, I went, oh, of course, I know about that. I recognise Atlas Oil. I remember as a younger person that was quite a prevalent business that we would be reading about in the paper. So my God. Now, I want to just divert a little bit. There's something in there that's pretty curious, and it's about tomatoes, growing tomatoes in the west of Ireland. Seems very incongruous, but can you tell us about that, please?
Of course, I left that out. The problem with recycling oil is, if I could give you the example of the hen and egg, I couldn't persuade. I knew the market, there was a huge market in the tomato, in the horticultural industry for oil. They were using a lot of oil. But to persuade people to take my recycled oil, it wasn't possible because I didn't have the product.
So Fred, will you just explain to me then the co-relationship, or how you went from recycling cleaning oil to the tomato industry in the west of Ireland?
Remember, it was only a theory. I had to prove that the oil would burn, and I couldn't persuade any customer to buy it from me when I didn't have it. So it was necessary for me to create my own market, create my own consumer, and the biggest consumer of fuel was tomatoes. It just uses oil. It burns it like there's no end to it. So I decided to build a tomato farm to use oil and then recycle the oil and supply it into my own farm.
And did you know in advance that this could be commercially viable?
I didn't know much about I knew the oil industry very much, but what I didn't know was how to grow tomatoes. That was, if you like, the problem. But I discovered a guidebook from Her Majesty's Stationery Office, HMSO, for 2 and 6pence. And with that little book, I decided to grow tomatoes, and I built up the largest tomato farm in the west of Ireland, 200,000 square feet of glass, exporting tomatoes to Glasgow, Belfast and Dublin.
And what was the name of that business, Fred?
We called it Sunny Fresh Nurseries.
Sunny Fresh Nurseries. Well, only a Monaghan man could have the audacity to go to the west of Ireland with the big winds and lots of rain and not a whole lot of daylight sunshine probably, to grow tomatoes. Fair dues.
It wasn't the best location in Ireland, in truth, but it was a matter of needs must. We had very little money, and to start that big business required a very humble, small start, and I got a small little farm there. But I'm rather proud of the fact that every business I did, we started in a small way. When I started the oil business, I bought the first truck myself, a second-hand wrecked truck from the Gulf Oil, which we had refurbished. It always travelled crooked, and we called it the crab. And I spent that, I suppose, the first month or two collecting oil, persuading people in garages, stop dumping the oil in the shore, let me collect it and I will pay you a penny a gallon for it. Now that was a strategic point. I thought if you have no value, it has no value, but if I give them even a penny, it gave it a value. And that worked. So we travelled the length and breadth of the Republic of Ireland, with a van and with empty barrels, it's building up a collection system in every county of Ireland until we decided then to go into Northern Ireland, which is
Excellent.
another story.
Fantastic story. Now, we'll just come to the later chapter in your business life and your entrepreneurial life. Healthcare into the Middle East. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what you did there, when you started, and how it grew to a large scale operation?
Well, let me clarify that. I didn't grow a big business. I was hired by the government as a venture capital analyst to investigate people investing in business, and I was at that for about 8 months when they asked me to divert and take over one venture which the Irish government was setting up. It was called the Irish Health Service Development Corporation, IHSCC, and to go out to the Middle East and compete with the Americans. The Americans were setting up hospitals all over the Middle East and taking Irish nurses and Irish doctors, and the added value was going off in dollars rather than back to the home country. So we were setting up a business to employ Irish people in the Middle East and compete with America. And my job was to establish it and get some contracts, which I did. We had a £20 million contract. We were the headlines of the Irish News on Christmas Eve one year, the announcement that we had just got this contract. And then they said, we need somebody to manage it. Will you go over there and manage it? And with my entrepreneurial head, I don't know how to say no to an adventure. So off I went and had a most interesting 3 years in the sands of Saudi Arabia.
Your life, I've read the book, and it's quite a remarkable story, and it typifies the essence of a serious and a serial entrepreneur, which you are and you've been, and I congratulate you on your varied successes. I guess behind every great man there has to be an outstanding lady. So can you tell me a little bit about your wife and your family, please?
Well, Helen is just remarkable. Remarkable. She would pretend to be quiet and unadventurous, but she never once said no to me. You know, my crazy ideas, she went along and had my back all the time.
Fantastic. Can I ask you one other thing? Advice for any young budding entrepreneurs or people that have an idea but they're nervous, they don't know how to go about it. What would you say to anybody watching this video, listening? What advice would you give to somebody who says, I'd love to, but I don't know how?
Well, I can't resist giving a plug for my next book, which is going to be called How to Be an Entrepreneur. And it will tell you from concept to cash flow what you ought to do or not to do, the pros and cons, the personal talents, how you can develop your self-confidence. Essentially, it comes down to self-confidence, courage, and common sense, and luck.
And luck. Well, with that, I'd say thank you very much, Fred, for your time. There will be other videos that people will be able to watch now on YouTube because there's much more to talk to you about. But for now, for today, thank you so much for your time. And I wish you every good health for your next project. And Monaghan Abu. Thank you, Fred.
Monaghan Abu. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Pleasure to talk to you.